Hello, greetings comic lovers, and it's time for a casual video. It's actually going to be a follow-up to the Three Jokers video. It's very dark in here tonight, so lighting's very moody, which is appropriate because we're going to be talking about the Joker. So this is just going to be a pure discussion follow-up to that video, but this video really needs to piggyback off of that one. So if you haven't watched it, link down below. Now let's go. So in that video, we were talking about how the Three Jokers 2020 Prestige Black Label book was being kind of reconciled inside of the mainline verse of DC Comics, because it's kind of in this weird nebulous continuity state, but because the Three Jokers concept was introduced inside the New 52, they're still playing with it in that sense. And so where it ended up was that in Batman 143, it was presented as that the Joker was able to present these multiple alters, multiple personalities, that the three Jokers were separate personalities, so it kind of recombined the concept into one Joker. And these were brought out by the villainous nomadic academic Daniel Captio, who had also trained Batman. But in the comments of that video, some people were asking, what about Batman 131 to 135 with all those other alternate Jokers that were created? Weren't there three Jokers created inside of that? Isn't that the true Genesis point? Aren't there still three that have been recombined into one, but in a different way? And that got me off on a thought tangent about a couple of different things when it comes to comics that I'm very passionate about: editor's notes and the multiple ways one can view things. Mostly the editor's notes. You know that I'll never miss a chance to talk about editor's notes. But a couple of people brought it up, so I thought it was worth mentioning. So in Batman 131 to 135, Bruce Wayne found himself inside of an alternate universe, which we discussed ever so briefly because there was a punchline variant there, a venomized punchline. And in that, there was a character called Halliday, and he was obsessed with becoming the Joker. And he created this machine that would allow him to peer into different multiverses, and he wanted to become the Joker. This for his universe, and he felt that he needed to experience the moment of creation for the Joker to do this. So he went to the origin point, which is presented as outside of the chemical factory, and he kept trying. So in 135, we see him try again. And I said try that many times on purpose because he's rejected. He can't do it. So to his horror, he discovers he isn't meant to be the Joker. He creates Jokers, and then he runs off, and him and Batman, they create a bunch of different Jokers. They play with all the different animation styles and different universes, and they have a lot of fun with it. Although, if you think about this for too long, you end up in paradox territory, because there already was a Joker and an origin point for Halliday to go back to. At that point, this becomes a bit contrived towards the end point that they seem to be working towards at this moment in the story, which is potentially those three Jokers. But there's this one panel inside of 135 where we're back with the Joker, and he has this line where he says, "How about a fourth?" And you see this panel where you have three Jokers and they seem to be walking away. There are a couple of ways to look at this. I know some may not agree, but I think there are a couple ways to look at it. One is that Halliday has actually created three physical Jokers, and that this is the genesis point for the three Jokers physically. Another is that it's one of those kind of time lapsey things where they do that thing where somebody's walking but they're layering it over, so it's supposed to be happening over a period of time. You could also look at it that way, although later on in 142 they're going to play with something that again could be interpreted a couple of ways. But here's the thing that I got to thinking about when people brought this up, which is if this was meant to be a reference to the three Jokers, but they're not going to be referencing the Prestige book, this still would have been a great time to refer back to Justice League 50, because they do that at other points where Bruce will say things like, "I'm coming for you, Joker, all three of you." But that doesn't happen here. So they leave that for a bit and play with some more Zur-En-Arrh things and fail safe. But then we get to Joker Year One, and they're playing with his origin. In 142, we're once again brought back to this moment, taking off the red hood outside of the chemical plant. And he staggers up the hill, and there are three Jokers, and they tussle with each other, and then they combine into one. So again, there are a couple ways to look at this. One way to look at this is that, okay, so there were really three created, and now they've recombined into one, and then that's what they're going to do with the alters. They're not alters, they're actually three separate people jammed inside of one body. And that may be the reason why, or it could be inferred that that's why when Bruce's former mentor Daniel Captio trains him, he takes the personality splitting section so easily. However, you could still look at it as this is a moment of, because of what's happened, of instability, and he's kind of trying to recombobulate, and that it's a metaphorical thing that's happening, not a literal actual battle between three people. I've also seen some people read this as two being killed. Some people currently think there are six Jokers. It's not as clear as it could be. And again, there's no editor's note. Now, you could argue that for the first one in 135, you'd be casting so far back that it wouldn't really be as relevant. But here, this is the perfect time, because this is, if it's following up from that scene, directly following up from 135. So if there was ever a time for an editor's note, it would be at this moment. You'd still need a fourth, because then you get to 143. You got one being trained by Daniel Captio, who then creates 3 alters. So that would still be 4. And if you go with this route, where it was 3 people, there were 3 Jokers, but then they were combined back into 1, but then we have the alters, does that mean that they're threatening us with splitting them back into 3 separate people? What do you think happened? Do you think it was that there were 3 then put back into 1? Does that seem like extra steps? Do you think that this was all planned out and this is where they were always going? Or do you think that this evolved a bit over time? It really does feel like they're trying to move away from it, because 143 is the latest explanation. And as mentioned, it doesn't refer back to 135. Heck, they don't even refer back to the prior issue. If it was where they were always going, do you think it was necessary to have 3, physically 3, and then recombine into 1? Is this a way to make it so that the chair wasn't lying, that there were 3, but it was still 1, so that's how it could have 1 name, but that still doesn't line up with what happened in the 3 Jokers? This is one of those things where no matter how much you try and make it align, just the way that it happened, it's not gonna 100% do it. In my opinion, this is overcomplicating things a bit. The idea of there being 3 physical Jokers, I'm not sure how attached the majority of people were to it. Some people were really into it, but overall, if this is one of those things that kind of faded away, I'm not sure how upset many would have been. It may have even just been easier to retcon the chair itself. To just say that the chair was not all-knowing may have been easier than everything else that ended up happening. But what do you think of this? Do you think it's an important step on the path towards there being the 3 Jokers as alters in the mind? Does that make it better? Some people don't enjoy the idea that they're once more playing with villainous alters. So would that alter it for you? Alter? If there were 3 actual Jokers that were crammed into 1? Do you think that what Halliday did would actually result in different personalities? Again, it opens up a lot of questions. I'm not sure how pertinent a lot of them are, though. But I did want to follow up because some people felt that this was a very key moment. I personally do not agree. I don't think it adds that much unless they come back and split them back up. Otherwise, it seems to be a moment that's just trying to reconcile the fact that at one point in another book there were 3 and that the chair said 3. And for some, if it was 3 always alters in the mind, that wouldn't track. What do you think? And how much does it matter to you, or are you just done with them playing with this plot line? Do you think this is an essential part of the coming back together into 1, or do you think that we could have just jumped back to the whole there are multiple personalities for the Joker without having to do all of the alternate universe shenanigans that they did? Does this make you want more editor's notes? Whenever I see things like this, I feel like editor's notes are just so important. Not that everybody's gonna go back and check them out, but just for the idea that they're there for the people who would want to, who are looking for those explanations, or who are just intrigued. At the end of the day, it ends up in the same place for now, time of recording. 1 Joker with multiple personalities inside for whatever reason, and maybe it'll stay that way, maybe it won't. Do you want it to? Let me know your thoughts about everything down below. Also, if you enjoy just these more quick off-the-cuff videos, I'm kind of getting more comfortable making them since doing X-Men 97. I know I say that every single time, but it's an evolution. It's happening. Your thoughts, I want to hear them. Put them down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time of your day spent discussing comic book ideas with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon.